All right, let's jump right into it. Today, we're unpacking a debate that is literally splitting economists, tech giants, and governments right down the middle. Is the AI boom we're living through an unstoppable engine for unprecedented global growth? Or is it going to turn into a catalyst for massive, irreversible economic disparity?
That's the core question guiding our exploration today. And we're going to look at this completely objectively. We're stepping away from the hype and the opinions and diving straight into the hard data. Because let me tell you, the latest macroeconomic numbers and industry reports tell a fascinating and honestly sometimes alarming story.
Here's our roadmap for weighing the scales of this impact. We'll start by breaking down the dawn of this AI revolution. Look at the promise of growth, the sheer costs of innovation, the dominance of tech giants, the risk of a global divide, and finally ask, is it salvation or doom? Let's get started.
So, Part 1, the dawn of the AI revolution, moving from theory to a full-on macroeconomic earthquake.
To really grasp the economic impact of tomorrow, we have to understand the technological leap happening today. We're moving from basic computing, where you just give a machine strict rules, to systems that actually learn on their own. And to get the economic scale of this, you absolutely need to understand deep learning. Unlike old software, deep learning emulates the human brain using massive neural networks. But here is the crucial detail for the economy. This tech requires a staggering amount of parallel computing power. Your standard computer CPUs, they just don't cut it anymore. You need advanced graphic chips, GPUs, to process oceans of data simultaneously.
And that brilliantly illustrates the dual narrative we're dealing with here. On one side, AI is seen as the ultimate catalyst to supercharge productivity across every sector. But on the exact opposite side, because of the immense hardware and financial power needed to run it, it risks becoming the biggest driver of monopolies and inequality in modern history.
Let's look at the upside in Part 2, the promise of growth and the potential salvation of our productivity.
According to World Bank projections, if AI lives up to the hype, this productivity boost could trigger an economic growth boom in the 2030s that surpasses even the massive growth we saw in the early 2000s. We're talking about advanced automation, rapid scientific breakthroughs, and just unheard-of corporate efficiency.
To see this growth already playing out in the real world, just look at this wild number. $3.35 trillion. That was NVIDIA's market cap in June of 2024, which briefly made it the most valuable company on the planet. This isn't just financial hype, folks. This is the entire global market betting heavily on the base infrastructure of AI. But the benefits aren't just financial. They're about pure efficiency, too. For instance, converting traditional CPU-based data centers into GPU-accelerated architectures for AI could save roughly 30,000 billion watt-hours of energy every single year. To put that into perspective, that's enough energy to power 4 million homes. So, paradoxically, AI could make us incredibly more energy efficient on a massive scale.
Which brings us to Part 3, the costs of innovation. What are the massive barriers to entry to keep this revolution running?
Training just a single large-scale AI model requires resources that are frankly mind-boggling. Now, sure, newer architectures like NVIDIA's Blackwell are vastly more efficient than their older Hopper chips, drastically reducing the number of GPUs you need. But look at the baseline requirements here. We are still talking about 4 megawatts of electricity, 2,000 specialized GPUs, and months of continuous computing. The out-of-pocket cost is just stratospheric.
Because of these astronomical R&D costs, the massive energy consumption, and the high price of hardware pilot lines, we're seeing an intense barrier to entry. The whole AI ecosystem is undergoing extreme consolidation. Simply put, only the megacorporations can afford the risk of failure. A small startup, there's no way they can gamble tens of millions of dollars on a single training run that might not even work.
And that leads directly to Part 4, the dominance of the giants, hardware monopolies, and market concentration.
This immense need for capital drives a very rapid concentration of power. By the first quarter of 2024, NVIDIA held a dominant 88% of the global GPU market. I mean, that is a market share that literally screams monopoly. AMD trails with a small 12%, while legacy giants like Intel are basically at zero in this specific slice. When a single company controls the foundational infrastructure of a global revolution, the market equilibrium becomes incredibly fragile.
You see, this isn't just a software race. It's a physical race, built on silicon and circuits. The investment required for new hardware pilot lines eats up an increasingly higher portion of revenue. This severely reduces the number of players who can afford them, to just a handful of giants like Intel, AMD, and NVIDIA. Smaller companies are completely priced out of the very foundation of the AI food chain. The power is completely locked down.
So, Part 5, the risk of the global divide. If small companies are out, who else gets left behind?
If companies with millions in revenue are cut out, ask yourself, what happens to entire developing nations? The World Bank is raising a very specific alarm about this. Emerging markets face immense structural hurdles. They often lack the digital and physical capital infrastructure, meaning they don't have the data centers, and their power grids simply aren't ready for the megawatts AI demands. Couple that with rising national debt driving up borrowing costs, and they are essentially technologically stranded.
The World Bank's core point is crystal clear here. Emerging market and developing economies that can't provide the right ecosystem and policy environment to adopt AI widely risk falling even further behind. Without massive, timely policy intervention and targeted investments, the AI boom won't bring the world closer together. Instead, it threatens to blow open an unbridgeable global wealth gap.
And this builds into a really sobering contrast. On one side, you have advanced economies harnessing AI for a potential 2030s growth boom, backed by massive corporate investments. On the other side, developing economies, which are already facing a projected 2.5% global growth slowdown in 2026, struggling with high debt and limited tech infrastructure. It is a stark macroeconomic divide. Which brings us to our final section, salvation or doom. Let's weigh the ultimate economic impact. When we lay it all out, AI is a tool of intense dual power. On the upside, our salvation, it acts as an incredible engine for massive productivity growth, unprecedented corporate value creation, and huge potential energy savings. But we cannot ignore the doom side of the scale. Heavy monopolistic concentration, astronomical energy and hardware costs, and the very real risk that developing nations will be left completely behind.
Ultimately, based on the macroeconomic data and industry dynamics we've explored today, the answer isn't black and white. The technology itself offers the salvation of unparalleled productivity, but the economic infrastructure it relies on risks dooming us to an insurmountable divide. The real challenge now falls to governments and public policy. Can they democratize this revolution before the gap becomes permanent? That's the multi-trillion-dollar question. Thanks for joining this explainer, and keep questioning the data.